What is covert emotional manipulation? Covert emotional manipulation, or CEM, represents one of the most fundamental concepts in dark psychology. This form of manipulation serves as the foundation for many psychological tactics you'll encounter in this field. As we explore the darker aspects of human behavior, you'll begin to recognize the signs of CEM across various contexts. Understanding what CEM actually consists of is essential for grasping how dark psychology operates in the real world. So what exactly is covert emotional manipulation? It's the attempt by one person to influence the thoughts and feelings of another through underhanded methods that remain undetected by the target. The person being manipulated has no idea it's happening. Let's break down each component of this term to fully understand what we're dealing with. The word covert refers to the hidden nature of the manipulator's intentions and actions. Not all emotional manipulation qualifies as covert. However, victims of covert manipulation typically don't know they've been manipulated. They don't understand how the manipulation was carried out, and they can't even guess at their manipulator's true motivation. CEM operates like a psychological stealth bomber, avoiding detection and defense mechanisms until it's far too late. The emotional aspect refers to what the manipulator specifically targets. While manipulation can focus on behaviors, beliefs, or willpower, CEM zeroes in on a person's emotional state and emotional reality. Why do manipulators concentrate on this particular area? Because they understand that emotions are the key to all other aspects of personality. Manipulating someone's emotions is like cutting their jugular vein. Once you have emotional control, you have complete control. The final piece is the term manipulation itself. There's a common misconception that influence and manipulation are synonymous. They're not. Manipulation refers to an underhanded hidden process of influence that occurs outside the awareness of the person being controlled. The crucial difference lies in the intention behind the action. Consider the mindset difference. An influencer thinks, "I want to help you make decisions that are good for you." A manipulator thinks, "I want to secretly control you to benefit myself." Understanding the intention behind any behavior is largely what determines whether we're looking at covert emotional manipulation or legitimate influence. Now that we've established exactly what covert emotional manipulation is and how it differs from other forms of influence and control, let's explore where it typically occurs and who the main perpetrators tend to be. There are four primary spheres where covert emotional manipulation commonly takes place: professional settings, personal relationships, romantic partnerships, and family dynamics. Romantic relationships perhaps represent the most common scenario for CEM and potentially the most destructive. However, less obvious forms of CEM can be found almost anywhere. Once you understand the concept and its practical applications, you'll be able to defend against it regardless of your situation. Just as certain scenarios commonly feature CEM, certain types of people consistently embody the principles underlying this manipulation. Connecting the theory of CEM to actual personality profiles is essential for complete understanding. The controlling romantic partner represents a classic manifestation of CEM principles. When someone is in a relationship and their partner obviously attempts to control them, the targeted person typically feels disgusted and looks for an exit. For this reason, many controlling partners exercise their influence as covertly as possible. Their girlfriend or wife becomes a victim of total emotional manipulation without ever realizing what's happening. This grants the manipulator the control they crave without the risk of discovery and permanent loss. A so-called friend might also employ CEM to get what they want from the relationship. Within this category, one of the most common manipulator types is someone who covertly induces feelings of guilt, sympathy, and obligation in their friend. The friend being manipulated remains unaware of the influence. They can't explain why they feel and behave the way they do toward their friend, the manipulator. The professional domain serves as another common playground for covert emotional manipulators. Countless people have experienced working for a boss or authority figure who seem to trigger mysterious feelings of guilt, fear, or duty. Those who've been manipulated this way could never identify why these feelings existed or where they originated. Family contexts present some of the most problematic scenarios within the world of CEM. A skilled manipulator who finds a victim within their own family becomes extremely dangerous in terms of the influence they can exercise. Why? Because CEM is already a powerful technique when the manipulator and victim share no genuinely deep connection. When you add the genuine connection of blood relation into the equation, the level of control and influence can increase exponentially. What makes family situations so well suited to CEM? Simply put, people already feel a level of social obligation to help family members and go the extra mile to ensure their needs are met. This existing predisposition toward compliance gets amplified by covert emotional manipulative practices, resulting in a highly malleable victim. So how exactly do covert emotional manipulators manage to establish such profound control over their victims? They employ a range of tactics that are extremely hard to detect and even harder to resist. Let's examine the secrets of covert emotional manipulators. You now understand what covert emotional manipulation is, what it isn't, and the types of situations where it occurs. This provides a solid foundation, but it's equally important to recognize the specific tactics manipulators use in their pursuit of control. The entire purpose of this manipulation is keeping it as undetected as possible. Let's expose this secret world completely. Love bombing is a technique typically deployed by emotional manipulators at the start of their interaction with a victim. It involves an intense, sudden, and forceful display of positive feelings toward the target. This might seem counterintuitive initially. If someone intends to harm another person, why act so intensely positive at first? Because it serves their objectives. The theory behind love bombing is straightforward. It creates intense feelings of trust, affection, and compliance from victim to manipulator. The extent of love bombing and who receives it depends on the manipulator's assessment of the situation. A victim who's lonely, desperate, and seeking support and comfort will likely be love-bombed more intensely and overtly because the manipulator knows they'll be receptive. Conversely, a more grounded victim requires a less intense and more subtle approach. Two important lessons about CEM emerge from understanding love bombing. First, it perfectly illustrates the covert nature of this manipulation. Imagine trying to recognize love bombing as something negative. Well, this person was really nice to me and made me feel really good. Such a statement is unlikely to trigger any red flags or warning signs of abuse. This is a textbook example of how something with a destructive outcome can be disguised as something positive. The second general lesson concerns how CEM is calibrated to each unique target. Experienced manipulators have covertly controlled many people and learned from each experience. They know the right intensity and timing of any given CEM technique in any given situation. For example, everyone responds differently to various loving gestures. Compliments work well on some people, while gifts have more effect on others. If someone inexperienced in CEM attempted to love bomb a target, they'd unlikely have much success. Why? Because it requires understanding the precise extent to which a victim will respond to certain techniques and not others. Just as a doctor can prescribe the right cure in the right dose, the dark manipulator can deploy the right manipulation in the right amount. Intermittent positive reinforcement is a technique that often follows love bombing chronologically. It's a method of controlling a victim without their awareness of what's occurring. The typical sequence in a textbook CEM scenario involves love bombing, followed by positive reinforcement, followed by intermittent positive reinforcement. Let's clarify why this sequence is so effective. Love bombing is the unconditional, unearned, and intense display of positivity from manipulator to target in the earliest days of interaction. Its purpose is to soften the victim's defenses, increase their reliance on the manipulator, and establish the framework of a positive relationship, friendship, or whatever form the interaction takes. The next step often involves switching to positive reinforcement. This represents a behavioral shift where the manipulator no longer displays relentless, unconditional positivity toward their victim. Instead, the manipulator withholds all positivity until the victim performs a desired behavior. For instance, if the manipulator wants their victim to call them frequently, they'll only show a positive response when this happens. The victim remains unaware that positive attention is being used strategically against them, but will subconsciously comply with the manipulator's wishes to experience those good feelings. This predictable positive reinforcement then gets replaced by intermittent positive reinforcement, or IPR. IPR involves withholding expressions of positivity even when a desired behavior is displayed. For example, if the manipulator wants their victim to offer to buy them things and the victim complies, the manipulator will only reward this desired behavior with a positive emotional response some of the time. This unpredictability creates a deep, subconscious craving for positive attention in the victim, without the victim ever having conscious knowledge of what's happening. The victim then begins chasing a good reaction from the manipulator by any means possible. The manipulator has their victim behaving in a specific way, and the victim has absolutely no awareness of what they're doing or why they're doing it. This sequential technique of love bombing, positive reinforcement, and finally intermittent positive reinforcement demonstrates how a covert emotional manipulator can use positive expression and cold withdrawal to sculpt the emotional responses of their victims. Reality denial is another CEM technique that initially impacts the mind rather than the emotions of the victim. However, the consequences can devastate a victim's emotions, as we're about to explore. One of the most terrifying experiences a human can endure is feeling like they're losing their sanity. This is disturbing enough when it can be explained by something understandable, mental illness or the temporary byproduct of stress. But it becomes even more unsettling when the feeling of insanity has been covertly induced by an emotional manipulator. Reality denial refers to a range of CEM techniques that all share the same purpose: destroying a victim's sanity to serve the manipulator's selfish aims. Let's explore how reality denial takes place and what its impact looks like. One of the main principles underlying reality denial is graduality. Manipulators are unlikely to instantly aim for total destruction of a victim's sanity, as such an outcome is nearly impossible to achieve without detection. Instead, skilled manipulators take the slowly but surely approach. This involves the gradual erosion of a person's sanity until their trust in their own faculties stands upon the flimsiest of foundations. How does a covert manipulator begin eroding a victim's sanity? It often starts with small-scale undermining of a victim's confidence in their own memory. The manipulator engineers various situations where a victim is left questioning their own recollection of events. The manipulator always ensures that their own portrayal of what really happened appears most credible. This process of minor confidence erosion actually serves two covertly manipulative purposes simultaneously. First, it reduces the victim's trust in their own powers of recall and understanding. Second, this trust gets transferred onto the manipulator instead. It's important to note that this never seems like a big deal initially. The manipulator simply comes across as the person with the slightly better memory. The victim will even feel grateful they have someone whose recollection they can rely on. Over time, the covert emotional manipulator increases the severity of the events they make the victim question. What starts as seemingly harmless and insignificant gets amplified into the victim, losing all confidence in their own cognitive powers. The most insidious element of this process is the victim's tendency to blame their own mind for this loss of ability. Skilled manipulators are the ones pulling the strings, but never, ever let the victim become aware of what's really taking place.